Joining me now, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, welcome back.
Good morning. It's great to be with you, Shannon.
Okay, so this letter that has been joined now by hundreds of people, different things bubbling up from state, from the White House, from DOJ. You've written this week. The American people should be alarmed and outraged that individuals who are so clearly opposed to our constitutional order and so plainly ignorant of right and wrong work on U.S. foreign policy every day. Why is this not a free speech issue?
Well, they're entitled to their free speech. They're also entitled to work wherever the heck they want. But in our country, the people who work for the President of the United States and the confirmed Secretary of State of the United States of America have an obligation to do the work that they direct them to do, not their own, Shannon, not their own vision for what America ought to look like. And Shannon, I saw this when I was Secretary of State. These attacks on the bureaucratic efforts, are always from the left. It's always from progressives. You don't see dissent cables from those of us who believe in a deep Judeo-Christian tradition. It is always from progressives, and they not only write about them, they not only speak about them. That's what this letter is. They then work diligently to undermine what it is these administrations are trying to do. So today, they ought to all be doing what President Biden and Secretary Blinken want them to do. It was most unfortunate that many of them didn't want to work on the projects that I and President Trump asked them to do. It is dangerous, Shannon, that their task is to perform what the executive directs, and they believe they have a right to voice their opinions and undermine American policy. That's both wrong as a moral principle, and it's deeply aconstitutional.
There are several media outlets reporting about some specific folks working within the Biden administration. Semaphore, the New York Post, the Federalist. They're all talking about people they've named that they say are either sympathizers with Iranian leadership or people that have actually lobbied for the aims of Iranian leaders. One of them works at the Pentagon, and dozens of senators have written a letter to the White House saying that her security clearance should be suspended. We can't find any record that it has been. Here's the headline this week from the Federalist. They say this: no serious country would allow terrorist sympathizers to run its government. Are you surprised by these allegations, as most of us average Americans are, that this would be going on within the U.S. government?
I'm most surprised that the administration hasn't put this person onward, hadn't gotten him out of the Department of Defense. She's working in an organization that controls and operates our special operating forces around the world at a time of deep conflict. Look, this administration has always had a soft spot for the Islamic Republic of Iran. We saw it in President Obama when they signed the JCPOA. We've now seen it while they've launched dozens and dozens of attacks against Americans. We've done almost nothing. I'm not so sure that these views that are held by this woman and who were held by Robert Malley, who was the special envoy for Iran, who's had his security clearance suspended, that frankly, it's not so much that they're outliers in this administration, Shannon. It is that their policies are deeply consistent with what President Biden has been trying to do. I'm very worried about what the Islamic Republic of Iran is doing, not only today in supporting Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah in Lebanon, but what they may be doing at our southern border, bringing folks into our country and presenting real risk here in the homeland as well.
Well, and to that point, I mean, you've seen the data, you've served on the job. We keep hearing about what a problem the border is. This administration has talked about the possibility that it's very attractive to terrorists. We talked with Senator Coons about the fact that there are millions of people here. We don't know who they are or where they are. Is that something that keeps you up at night? How worried should we be? Because new polling shows that Americans are worried about Islamic terror attacks on U.S. soil. Now, 73% of them. That's up 23 points since May.
Shannon, it's something I'm deeply concerned about. I heard Senator Coons' remarks. He's a good and decent man. He's just wrong about the Biden administration on the border. This isn't about proper asylum claims. This is about a couple million folks who we have no idea where they are inside of the United States. And the attacks now, 6 weeks on, in October 7th, were in the planning for months, if not years. Goodness knows what might be taking place inside the United States that has also been planned by Iran over the last months and years. It's a real risk. They've tried to blow up things here in the United States before. They continue to threaten to assassinate former American officials and American civilians as well. They've made clear their intention to do so. It's a very real risk. And if we don't know who's coming into our country, Shannon, it's pretty straightforward. No matter what Senator Coons tells you, that risk is greater. Don't take my word for it. Take a word of Mayor Adams in New York City. Take the word of Director Wray. They know these are real risks in their cities and in their country as well.
Okay, so with news of a potential ceasefire deal, let's pivot back to the Middle East. There is no debate that there are civilian lives that are being lost in Gaza over the current operations. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is a Palestinian American herself, is among those calling not just for this humanitarian pause, but she wants a ceasefire. And here's what she's saying this weekend about U.S. continued support for Israel.
We're done supporting and funding this violence. We're done watching children being pulled out of the rubble, blood coming down their faces. We're tired of allowing folks to be able to think that the answer to war crimes on October 7th was more war crimes.
So how do you answer these growing concerns about the reality of civilian deaths that are happening right now in Gaza?
Shannon, the singular best way to protect the people that are living in the Gaza Strip is the destruction and annihilation of Hamas. It's pretty straightforward. It should be done as quickly as possible. The lives that they've lived over the last years sitting under a terrorist government have not been good lives. The fact that Israel is now determined to do it is something that is both decent and moral and good for the people living there, good for the people of Israel, and great for the United States of America as well. I listened to her talk. There's a lot of discussion about what's going to happen the day after, Shannon. Think about what the day after looks like if Hamas is not destroyed. If Hamas is not destroyed, this destruction, this death will continue. Iran will feel like it got an enormous victory, and the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians will all continue their terror campaigns and their efforts all across the globe if they think the West isn't prepared to do the most basic task of government, and that is to protect its own citizens. I hope that Israel will do this quickly. I hope that they will do this with enormous decency and protect civilians to the maximum extent possible. But the requirement to destroy Hamas and to send a message to the world that the West is serious about protecting its traditions is a requirement of every government.
You and I have a mutual friend, Joel Rosenberg, who lives and works in the Middle East. He's the editor-in-chief of All Israel News and All Arab News, a couple of sources there. He has put out an urgent call for help for Christians who are in Gaza. He says they're sheltering in churches. We know many of them have been killed, as have thousands of other civilians. He's pointing out that Israel is asking them to evacuate to the south, but he says for them that's essentially a death sentence because they don't have the shelters of where they currently are. He says this: as followers of Jesus, they are considered pagans. They know that they can expect no mercy from Hamas and the others in the south. He goes on to say he believes their wives and daughters will be raped. They will all potentially face torture and murder. He's asking the Israeli government to allow them to evacuate to Christians who would take them in the West Bank. Given everything that's going on there and the millions of civilians who are in danger in Gaza, is it right? Should the Israel military or government make a way for this specific group of folks to evacuate?
Well, Joel's certainly right. Christians living in Gaza are at risk. They've been at risk for years. There's no doubt about that. The best way to create safety and protection for the Christians that are living there, I think, is, as I said before, to move on Hamas just as quickly as absolutely possible. I hope the Israelis will do everything they can to protect Christians in that area. Shannon, you and I have worked on this issue. We worked on Christian persecution in Nigeria and in northern Iraq. This is something that is near and dear to our hearts. I hope the Israeli government will do everything they can. I don't know that they are any safer in the north than they are in the south. I don't know the situation on the ground that well. But the core mission set has to be to get these hostages home, to bring them home now, and to destroy Hamas as quickly and as with a little civilian loss of life as we can. And when we do that, we'll protect not only the Christians that are there, but the Arabs and all of the others as well. This is not good for anyone living in Gaza, and Christian persecution there has been continuous in the decade past.
Yeah, and as we know, millions of civilian lives of all backgrounds caught in the middle who want nothing to do with Hamas. Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, Shannon. Bless you.